Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here along with Nick Whalen. And on the pod today, we will discuss the latest news with Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler's return to Miami, and how your fantasy rosters are hanging on for dear life here in the final stretch of games. Nick, before we get into the NBA madness, what about March Madness? How's the betting card looked through the first two rounds of the tournament?
Some ups, some downs, mostly downs to begin the tournament. Got off to a terrible start early on, but we're clawing back. We're clawing back. Everybody was on Drake to cover against Missouri. I followed the crowd on that one. We hit that. Had the Wisconsin team total over 84.5 in their first game against Montana. Landed right at 85. We love that. But it's just been another year of mediocrity for me at the college level, Brandon. This happens every single year. Given my job, and I'm sure you get this too, everybody's just like, oh, you must be really good at March Madness picks. You must win your bracket every year. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I think we all knew coming into this, the prevailing theme was going to be chalk. And, I went with a fairly chalky bracket, but I mixed in, a few shots there. I'm like, it can't be that chalky, right? Let's pencil in Illinois for the Elite Eight. There's a team with some variance. They could beat anybody on any given night. That's the big one that is wrecking things right now. I think I had St. Mary's going to the Elite Eight as well, just trying to find something there. And obviously they ended up losing in the round of 32. But I believe my Final Four is for sure intact. I think I could still have like 7 of the Elite Eight. So we're doing okay. This is usually how it goes for me. I'm like horrible the first 2 weekends, and then I start making it up at the end because I do tend to go chalk, when we get to the Elite Eight and the Final Four. But I do have Florida. I've been sticking with Florida to win it.
It's funny that you say that because I am the exact opposite. I've always been good, relatively good. You have your misses, but it's a lot of games to pick. The first 2 days of March Madness,
yeah,
that's where my bread is buttered, and then things tend to fall apart because I get a little too excited taking some of these upsets. There were none. We didn't have anything. So I got absolutely massacred on those first 2 days. Those 2 days were, I think, 2 of the worst betting days of. Well, I know it for a fact, actually. I had no reason to couch it. The 2 worst betting days of the entire calendar year. So we enter back into our comfort zone, Nick, the NBA. I don't know why we venture out. This is our world. Well, what are we doing? Well,
I had a bad night in the NBA last night. I'll tell you that. I had DeAndre Hunter over 1.5 threes. He had 2 wide open looks in the third quarter, missed both of them, ended up just finishing with 1. I had him over, I think it was 12.5 points. He finished, I believe, at 11. That was rough. Did have OKC to cover a big number against the Kings. We at least finished off the night with a win. But, I had to make some Jimmy Butler picks on VSiN. It was like, that was the kind of the big story, right? It's like Jimmy Butler back in Miami. And I completely fell prey to this narrative. Like, no Steph, Butler's going to have to run everything. He's going to, really take it out on the Miami Heat. Could not have been more of the opposite. I mean, that was like the ugliest game of the year for the Warriors. Obviously the Heat, ended up shooting crazy from 3, and, Tyler Hero's going off in the second half, but the lack of aggression from Jimmy Butler was a little bit shocking. I thought he might just get there on volume alone. Like, the points prop was only like 20.5. And once Curry was rolled out, I thought we'd be in great shape there. I also took Jimmy Butler 6.5 boards, finished right at 6. He had 6 going into the fourth quarter, and the game got so out of hand that they pulled him at like the 7-minute mark, which that is something we're noticing more and more, Brandon. And I'm sure you're seeing this as well. If you're betting the NBA right now, it's like the amount of blowouts night to night, the amount of times that I feel like I've just gotten robbed, where it's like, all right, end of the third quarter, just need one more assist, 1 more rebound, 4 more points. And the game gets so out of hand one way or the other that we're having starters pulled early on. It's like Detroit won by 26 last night against the Spurs. Miami blows out the Warriors. The Knicks blow out the Mavericks. Memphis puts 140 on Utah in a game that a lot of people thought Utah could hang around in. It's so tough right now. And you got, the entire bottom of the Eastern Conference, basically every single night is impossible to project. Like, there are 2 games tonight, Brandon, and it feels like there's one of these every night. 2 games tonight that neither team should want to win. Washington, Philly, Toronto, Brooklyn. All 4 of those teams have no interest in winning right now.
Yeah, I was on the Jimmy Butler stuff too. I thought that because I got in on it early in the day that I was going to be ahead of the market. Didn't matter.
Oh, we got a good number. We got a good number.
Oh, great number. Yeah, closing line value win for sure. Unfortunately, my betting account doesn't acknowledge those. I was on points and assists. So you had the rebounds. We had the whole stat line covered. None of it hit. But you're right, and I think it's something that I definitely look at when it comes to the prop market. When you have good teams facing bad teams, I think it's easier to project that there may be a blowout here. So be a little more cautious with betting overs on those props. I do think it's a good opportunity if you are an unders bettor to look heavier into that, but it does work both ways, because I'll give you an example. Last night I was on LaMelo Ball over 23.5 points. He had 3 at halftime with 4 fouls. So right. I mean, the only reason I was still paying attention to that prop is because I was working the Magic game last night. That would have been crumple up the ticket, throw it in the trash, and move on with my night kind of stuff. He went ballistic in the fourth quarter. So in these close games, when you have those superstars and you need to get there on the number, sometimes it takes that last quarter surge in order to get even close.
Yeah. Well, the key is the game remaining close enough that they're going to be out there. And that was the case against Orlando. I didn't make this an official play, thank God, but I was leaning under on 214 in that game. It, of course, landed 215. The Hornets had one of their best shooting nights of the year from 14 threes. You got Nick Smith and Josh Green banging out threes, and that was with Miles Bridges having a terrible game. LaMelo was terrible until late in that one, and still just could not get an under. We had 20 points for the Magic in the third quarter. Thought we were going to be golden, and they put up 28 in the fourth. But anyway, we got to talk Damian Lillard here, right? I mean, sure. that is certainly the biggest news in fantasy right now, and the Bucks have given some indications that they're optimistic that Lillard could return. I think they've known about this for a couple of days. They're already doing an aggressive treatment plan. I don't know, man. I wouldn't count on it.
There's no way.
There's 10 or 11 games left in the regular season. Even in a best case scenario where Lillard is back for the playoffs, I think we're just going through the same routine again with Milwaukee, where every single year they're dealing with something. Usually it's been Giannis, over the last couple of years, who's always banged up going into the playoffs. Both he and Lillard were missing time in the postseason last year. And again, even in a best case scenario, it's like, okay, Damian Lillard is coming in cold after this serious medical issue to start the playoffs. And if Milwaukee loses tonight, and by the way, they are now a 10-point dog against a Nuggets team that might not have Jokic because Giannis is also out tonight. If they lose tonight, they're down to the 6th seed in the East.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on this, but based on what I understand about blood clots, and the second you go on blood thinners, that's a several month process in order to get your clot where it needs to be. So that's not, I don't know. I'm surprised that they even came out and said indefinitely. Mm-hmm. Good for them that they want to remain optimistic. If they don't want to rule him out for the season, I'll go ahead and do it. I don't think we see Damian Lillard again. Post regular season for sure. Yeah. But even in the postseason, that's just not the kind of thing that you mess with. You don't go, well, it's not like a rolled ankle, or you go, well, I think I could play through this. Blood clots are serious life or death issues. So you have to be completely cleared from that before you can make your way back out onto the court.
I mean, it ended Chris Bosh's career, right? And I think there's a chance that I think he had some input in that. He was at obviously a different stage in his career than Dame is, but that's the kind of risk that we're talking about here. So I'm with you. I tend to take a more pessimistic view on this. I think if you're the Bucks, you're of course you're not just gonna close the book right there. Like if there's any glimmer of hope that Lillard could return, you're gonna relay that to your fan base. You don't want to just basically be like, yep, we're folding up shop, season's over, Dame's not coming back. But I mean, I think we already knew that Milwaukee probably didn't have a championship ceiling, and given this news, I don't know if Milwaukee makes it out of the first round, right? I mean, you take Damian Lillard away from this team, it's just not an impressive roster. And you look at this game Wednesday night against Denver, and obviously Giannis is out as well. A shocking lack of creators for this team. It's it's Kyle Kuzma, I guess, and Kevin Porter Jr. That's about it. Everybody else is a bit player. It kind of reminds me of what we saw with the Warriors last night. One of the big misses for me beyond the Butler props was, I wish I would have just taken the under, because I talked about it with Alex Barutha later in the day when we did the RotoWire NBA show on Sirius, and we looked at the Warriors starting lineup. We're like, this team is not going to score. You take Curry away, and you make Butler the only playmaker. They were starting 2 non-scorers in Gary Payton and Draymond Green, and the Bucks kind of have a similar thing going right now, where they don't have a whole lot of guys to pick up the slack. And to be fair, you take away the top 2 players, 2 all NBA caliber guys. Yeah, not many teams are going to be able to to have success, but so much is going to be on Giannis. And if Lillard is limited, if Lillard isn't out there, I don't know that you could just say, yeah, the Bucks will beat the Pistons or the Bucks will beat the Pacers. I mean, those are now 50-50 series at best.
Yeah, the thing that I don't, I'm trying to look this up real quick. You can find the records easily without the Bucks without Giannis, the Bucks without Dame, but what they look like when both guys are out, I don't have a recollection of many games where those two where they both haven't played, because then at least you have somebody where the offense is running through them. Like you said, I don't know exactly what they turn to. This is just a bunch of guys that are used to standing around and letting everybody else create that sort of create that gravity on the basketball court. And it's sometimes guys get excited when they get the opportunity to be stars. The Gary Trent Juniors of the world that are used to playing complementary roles might be asked to step up. I mean, look at Quentin Grimes in the run that he's been on. Some of these guys thrive on these opportunities, so you can't write them off completely. Also, I found this interesting in terms of the spread. The Bucks are an even 6-6 this year without Giannis in terms of the number. Now, I don't know how that equates to Damian Lillard also being out, but at least they're not completely lost.
Yeah, so the last two games that both of them missed, one of them they lost by 29 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the other was, you may recall this game, was right before the All-Star break. They played Minnesota and got a win. That was, I think it was like right after Kyle Kuzma joined the team. He played well. So you do see these spots every now and then. I feel like every contender in the West has like had one of these games recently where it just feels like they're going to romp because the other team is missing 2 or 3 starters and then they don't. So like I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't shock me, if Milwaukee does kind of band together and make an effort tonight against Denver, especially if Jokic doesn't play. He was moved from doubtful to questionable. So we'll see. Doesn't really make sense to me to put Jokic out there, especially with no Giannis. But yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. Just knowing I'm with you. I don't think Damian Lillard comes back in the regular season. I think there's almost no chance that happens. So could pretty safely drop him, I would say, in fantasy. And I think
who takes over now? Is this now a Taurean Prince? Who are we looking at to be and not just with Giannis out? I think more so looking at this with the Damian Lillard news for the remainder of the season. Mm-hmm. Who is it now that we should be excited about, if anybody?
Kevin Porter. It's Kevin Porter and I guess Kyle Kuzma to some degree. Like he's just going to have to do more. I don't know if you really want either of those guys playing 30 plus minutes and putting up a 25% usage rate, but that's the only option. I mean, you can talk about guys like Taurean Prince and Gary Trent and Brook Lopez, but I don't think they're not Quentin Grimes type of players, right? Like Quentin Grimes is kind of this, aggressive, like almost Austin Reevesy type of guy where it's like, all right, if the minutes are there and the opportunity is there, yeah, he can look like a really good, ball dominant NBA player. Like Gary Trent is I'm going to stand in the corner. Giannis is going to collapse the defense. He's going to kick it out to me for a wide open 3 guy. And Taurean Prince basically just shoots corner threes. Like Taurean Prince is not running the pick and roll. Gary Trent's not operating anything on his own. They need Giannis and Dame to set them up for what they bring to this team. So they don't have a whole lot of secondary creators. But yeah, fantasy wise, Kevin Porter Jr. I think now has to be the guy.
And he's one of those guys that he's not afraid to chuck it. If he's gonna be given the opportunity to shoot, it feels like when anytime I've watched the Bucks this year with Kevin Porter out there, the second they bring him off the bench, he's shooting. And his prop for points has been set around 14.5. I'm assuming without looking at it that it's got to be a little bit higher tonight, given his increase.
I saw it at usage. 15 earlier. Maybe it's down a little bit already. Yeah, let me see the updated number. Yeah, 14.5 at DraftKings, and it's actually shaded to the under. So don't love seeing that. But I with Porter, the attempts will be there. That's what I could guarantee you. It's just like how many of them are going down. And keep in mind, I mean, obviously a lot of things have happened with him, mostly bad over the last couple of years. But he was 54th in per game fantasy in 2022-23 when he was a member of the Houston Rockets. So like this is a guy who has a history of being somewhat of a lead guard, lead creator. With how his career has gone, he's kind of turned into this bit player who's honestly just lucky to be in the NBA. But he has a history of operating with a much higher usage rate.
Jalen Williams missed his 7th straight game with a hip injury. That's not slowing the Thunder down, though. They were the first team to race to 60 wins on the season. Do you expect him to come back before the end of the year? Or is this something that fantasy managers should you just have to be set with the fact that one of your best players is just done for the rest of the year?
Well, it's almost works against him that the Thunder just don't miss a beat when he's not out there. And they were down Keeson Wallace. They were down Aaron Wiggins last night. Just didn't matter. They absorbed, Keegan Murray having the game of his life, kind of dragging the Kings back into that one. OKC was up 23 early in the first half, and the Kings got it down to 5 or 6 at one point before the Thunder stretched it back out. The numbers looked okay for SGA last night. I actually thought he was pretty bad by his standards. I watched that full game due to my prop interests, and he had 5 turnovers in the first half. He was just reckless over and over. They were not really calling a whole lot of fouls, and he was not getting the calls that he was used to getting, just kind of flying into guys in the lane, wasn't doing much as a creator. And the Thunder still, cruised to an easy double-digit win. To answer your question, though, I don't think Jalen Williams is done for the year. I mean, he was considered a game-time call last night, and the Thunder to me are not a team that really messes around all that much with the injury report. So I think there's a real chance he could play Thursday against Memphis. He could play Saturday against Indiana, probably one of those 2 games. Obviously, it depends how late your fantasy season goes as to will he be out there before it's over. But I don't, if you're OKC, even though you're the 1 seed by a mile, you don't want to just hold him out and go in cold into round 1. Like you want to get him reintegrated as much as you can.
My fantasy leagues are into the championship right now. Everybody's structured differently. I am not, unfortunately, invited to those, but we live to fight another year. Anthony Davis was another guy I wanted to talk about. He was back from his 18-game absence, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 27 minutes. Not quite as special with Dallas as he was in that first game that we saw against Houston. That everybody was like, "Well, what is this going to look like?" And Dallas looked like title contenders in that game. What are you supposed to do with this guy, though? I mean, I feel for you if you have to set a lineup and set it and forget it for the week. I don't know what you're supposed to do with Anthony Davis, because you want someone like that in your lineup, but he's obviously not going to play he's not going to play second night of back-to-backs. That's obvious. He might not play back-to-back games, just given the way Dallas has no incentive to be aggressive about this.
It really depends on your read of the situation, because Dallas is still only a half game back of the play-in, and it's not just Phoenix anymore. Like Sacramento now has the same record as the Suns. They've been backsliding. I think they've lost like 8 of their last 11. So you now have like 2 vulnerable teams ahead of you. Phoenix has the toughest schedule in the NBA remaining. They've won some games that they probably didn't deserve to win over the last couple of weeks. So it depends. We've seen this team in the past go out of its way to back out of the play-in tournament for draft purposes and get Derek Lively. This is a totally new regime. You have a new owner, you got a new GM and everything in there. PR wise, you would think that you want to win as many games as you can. So I was surprised they brought Anthony Davis back at all. I didn't think it made a whole lot of sense. I was surprised he played as many minutes as he did. I mean, given the long layoff, given the situation, 27 minutes in that game against Brooklyn, tough situation with it being a back-to-back. Like he was never going to play in both of those games, but I think he's going to be out there tomorrow against Orlando. They don't have another back-to-back until next Friday and Saturday, April 4th and April 5th. And that's their final back-to-back of the year. So we have a 1-game sample, essentially like a 3-day sample here of Anthony Davis being back, but I think they're going to play him. I think they would have made that decision already. I don't think he would have played on Monday against the Nets if they didn't want him to be a part of this. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, I guess. If you held on to Anthony Davis, a lot of people probably dropped him. But I think that remaining back-to-back on April 4th and 5th would be the big concern.
Also, shout out to Najee Marshall, 38 points in his last game, 17 of 25 from the field. But I think it is easy for us on the outside to say, Dallas isn't going to go anywhere in the playoffs. Just shut everybody down. They spent a bunch of money to bring in Klay Thompson. They made that trade that was a PR blunder and a basketball operations blunder to bring in Anthony Davis and trade away your star and Luka Doncic. You do have to kind of see this through, and they are in position to potentially make a play-in tournament. So, and look, if you have Anthony Davis, you have Klay Thompson in whatever form he's in his career right now, Spencer Dinwiddie, you're at least good enough to mess around and win a play-in game if those guys are out there. So I guess it's worth giving it a shot. And then I guess you could get Gafford back at some point. He hasn't been ruled out for the season.
Oh yeah, he's been playing in the G League. Lively's on a similar trajectory. Like
Yeah.
I think that's the other side of this. Is like, to me, if I'm the Mavericks, I would just want to absorb yet another PR hit and just kind of pack it in. Make sure you don't re-injure Anthony Davis and try to salvage this thing and rebuild this thing as much as you can around that new core this summer. But I don't think they're looking at it that way. And you're not totally wrong to say, like, if they could get in, like if Sacramento keeps sliding or Phoenix takes a step back and the Mavs, somehow get their way into this, it's not that crazy that they could win a 9-10 game. And, really, if you're Mavs ownership, if you're Nico Harrison, like, you're just looking to generate any kind of positivity here, right? And you mentioned Anthony Davis's debut. I think it was that against Houston, his first game with the Mavs. Like, that crowd was buzzing, man. Like, at first it was hostile, and then Anthony Davis played so well that it was like, oh, all right. I mean, he's not Luka, but this isn't so bad.
Look, so the Lakers were in town the other day against the Magic, and I'm in the building for all these games. You can kind of see how when you watch Luka, and you can see this sometimes on TV, but especially if you're in the arena and watching him off ball on offense, and then God forbid you have your eyes on him on defense, you can see where a general manager would watch these games night after night and go, I can't do this anymore. This guy moves at a sloth's pace, and it would drive me crazy. It's still a bad idea. I'm not justifying it, but you can see where somebody's sitting in the, you got your sky view, your bird's eye view of the court, watching this guy operate the way that he does. It would drive me absolutely crazy, especially if you have any passion for defense. This guy just doesn't try. It would drive me crazy. I do have one shutdown candidate that I want to talk about, and we have your questions that we're going to get to. But Nick, talk to me about Rebet.
Yeah, so just a heads up, March Madness is here, and if you're looking for a way to get in the game, it's time to check out Rebet, the ultimate social sportsbook and casino platform with over 100 leagues on the sportsbook in 25 plus 24/7. A lot of numbers there. Live dealer casino games. We are striving to give users an experience they haven't had elsewhere. All March long, Rebet is rolling out daily promos, making it the ultimate month of exciting offers for fans. And right now, for a limited time, Rebet will match your first purchase up to $100 in Rebet cash. All you got to do is use the promo code RotoWire. Download Rebet today. You can do that on the App Store or Google Play. Enter the code RotoWire, ROTOWIRE, and start playing with your promo funds. It's time to play, predict, and experience the madness only on Rebet.
All right, so the player that I wanted to talk about is Jerami Grant with the Portland Trailblazers. He's missed 9 of their last 11 games. Portland is 3.5 games out of a play-in spot. This is a team that has not made the same sort of commitment to making it to the playoffs and going on some sort of a run this year. They've had a nice stretch. They are a fun team to watch. I think they're definitely building something. So you could make a case that, playing in competitive games into the postseason would be a positive for this group. I still think that they would stand to benefit more from being a lottery team. Jerami Grant playing again this season, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. Where do you stand on that?
Well, Jerami Grant has a long history of this. I believe it has been since 2021. He has not played a game in the month of April. So if that happens again this year, that would be 4 consecutive seasons where he is either injured or shut down at the end of the year. And I wonder if he's like aware of this at this point and trying to keep the streak going. It's honestly crazy. If you look back, like right around, mid to early March, every single year, something happens and he just stops playing. So yeah, I mean, he's played in 6 games since mid-February, still dealing with that knee injury. There's really not been much in terms of an update, much in terms of an indication that he's close. He was listed as doubtful for their game yesterday. We're not even getting the ramping up activity or participated in practice or anything like that. And part of it is, teams just aren't practicing that much this time of year. Everybody's basically playing every other day. But the Blazers have been just as good, if not better, without him. You could say the same thing about Ayton. It's really unlocked Denny Avdia. I was watching that Blazers Cavs game last night, and I mean, Avdia's bringing the ball up. Like, he's operating as the primary creator.
He's so good.
He's so fun to watch. So good. I don't think they'll be in a huge rush to bring Jerami Grant back. He's also just not that good of a fantasy player. I think if you were rostering Jerami Grant, you probably gave this up a while ago.
Well, then continue to give up on one Jerami Grant. Let's get to the listener questions portion of today's show. All right, let's hop right to it. Angel said, we ain't dropping AD. If he's out there on the waiver wire, though, I would recommend scooping him up at this point. Was he in any waiver wire columns at RotoWire.com? I'm curious if he even made his way.
I will say in the leagues that I play in, he was not out there. I was looking for him because I know Jalen Brunson is actually out there in one of my important leagues, and that's going to be interesting. Although this is a league that ends with Monday's games, like you'd think it would, just ended on Sunday, right? No, so there's going to be a waiver run and then one night of games where everybody is basically just trying to get as many guys in their lineups as possible. Knicks don't even play on Monday, so I will not be grabbing Jalen Brunson. But yeah, if your league goes through game 82, make sure you check, because there's a reasonable chance that guys like Brunson and Davis, even Steph Curry was dropped in that league. And again, it's because of the unique format and people knowing when the league ends. But this time of year, there are steals out there. Some people will just kind of rage drop. You'll have other people stop paying attention if they're in the the bottom half of the league. So make sure you double check.
Christian says, good afternoon, fellas. Who's the better point guard pickup for the fantasy playoffs this week? Anthony Black, Bub Carrington, or Scotty Pippen's kid? Where do you land on that? Three really good options.
First of all, so he spells Scotty differently, and yet he's still a junior? Like, can you do that? Like, he spells it with a Y.
If it sounds the same, then you're still a junior. I've never really thought about that.
Kind of an unprecedented move by Mr. Pippen, but I guess we will allow it. So I'm looking at the schedules here. Orlando plays 2 more games. Memphis plays 2 more games. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that maybe Washington plays 2 more games. So we do have a pretty light week overall. 3 games for Bub Carrington. So, and that's including tonight. So if you can get him in there tonight, back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday, and then they play Saturday against the Nets.
Good fantasy matchups in there too.
Yes. Carrington has been pretty rough of late. Did play a lot better against Toronto on Monday, but prior to that, had really not been giving you much for 4 or 5 games in a row, which is kind of what you live with Bub Carrington. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Philly, Indiana, Brooklyn, that's pretty good. Nets are kind of up and down. They play slowly, but you'll take those matchups. I think, Brandon, and you could probably speak to this even better, as far as like who's played the best of late, I like Anthony Black is somebody that I have circled to grab in a couple of leagues that do go through game 82. Part of this is tied to the revolving door at point guard for the Orlando Magic. I look forward every day to the eventual Cole Anthony update. We're seeing some Corey Joseph as well, but I think Black to me is probably the most intriguing.
You're getting a lot of Magic fans right now calling for him to be the starting point guard, but Jamal Mosley is so tired of messing with his rotations this year. He's just leaving Anthony Black on the bench, but starting that's just for the aesthetic. That's the promotional tweet. What really matters is who's closing the game, and Anthony Black is doing that for the Magic. Honestly, this team's playing better without Cole, because Cole is kind of a turnstile on defense, and he's a little overconfident as an offensive player. And he's not a great passer, so it's a bad combination at point guard. Corey Joseph just gets his teammates involved and gets out of the way. That is not a stat guy. But Anthony Black can score, and opposing teams leave him wide open from 3. When he has those games where he's on, he can knock those down, and then all of a sudden your stat line's looking a lot better, and he's efficient with it. I looked up this stat the other day. The Magic are now 10-0 the last 10 times Anthony Black has scored at least 10 points. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I think, did you tweet that last night?
Yeah, it was. I tweeted it before the game. It was 9-0, and then they won the game, and he scored 20. So it's 10-0 now.
Yeah. I do want to give a little bit of a shout to Scotty Pippen here, who has been playing well. Obviously, John Morant has missed 5 games in a row, so that's a big part of it. He was still playing 22 to 26 minutes off the bench, even when Morant was out there. So there might be some staying power there. Going to give you, he's giving you over 2 steals per game in that span. But obviously, if Morant comes back, we're looking at a lower ceiling there.
The great Aaron Van Buren asks, would you rather have Gary Trent or Kevin Porter Jr.? So choosing between 2 Bucks who are going to get an uptick here in their statistical outputs.
Kind of a depends what you need situation. I think overall, like in a points league, Kevin Porter is probably going to give you more. He's probably going to damage your field goal percentage. He's probably going to turn it over a decent amount, but I think he'll give you more well-rounded numbers. Whereas with Gary Trent, obviously you're getting the high volume 3s. That's kind of been his calling card this year, and he's been knocking them down, especially lately. Last 7 games for Gary Trent, shooting like 45% from 3. He does give you steals. That's always kind of been a part of his profile when the minutes are there, but not a whole lot in terms of rebounds or assists. Field goal percentage is going to be tied pretty heavily to the 3-pointers. I think there's a little bit more upside with Kevin Porter Jr., but if you need the threes, Gary Trent.
Yeah, well said. Aaron also followed up saying that he's very sad.
I'm also a Bucks fan. I'm also sad.
a lot of sadness on this podcast. Let's wrap with Peter R, to be specific. He picked up Payne. Is he a hold with 3 games left, assuming that Deuce McBride is out? 12 team 9 cat, and we appreciate you chiming in, Peter. This Brunson injury really throwing a wrench in the plans of the New York Knicks. I know they were able to get that win last night, but still, this team is just overall not nearly as good as I thought they were going to be this season, and I worry about them going into the playoffs.
I think the Brunson injury may be a blessing in disguise as far as some of these other guys getting to actually play a little bit more freely. Everything is so Brunson dependent for that team, and it doesn't feel like it should be because of the talent around him. It's like it's not a one-man team. It's like you have like one of the best starting 5s in the NBA, and yet everything runs through Brunson. And I think it was right after he got hurt. There was that story that McCall Bridges went to Tibbs and said like, "Hey, we got to spread things around. We got to get the bench more involved. We can't be so dependent on our top 4 or 5." So I do think there's a world in which maybe they come out of this better. But as far as Payne goes, I mean, we've seen 1 good game, 1 bad game for him. He started the last 2. McBride's been banged up, and McBride is ruled out for tonight. Yeah, the Dallas game should have been such a good matchup for him. He only took 3 shots in 30 minutes. He is going to give you assists no matter what. He'll probably average, somewhere between 4 and 6 assists over the next few games. The points are going to come and go. The threes are going to come and go. What was the league size here? Did he say
12?
I think in a 12-team league, there's probably somebody better out there. It might not be somebody better with 3 games, but I think you could find someone probably a little bit more dependable. It's not the end of the world if you have to go with Payne, but I would double check if you have the ability to make that move.
And see, now this is commitment here. Worrying about the IR at this stage in the season, it just feels like you're wasting. Is that the? Do you though? At this point, McBride or Cole Anthony? I think
you are at the mercy of when your league ends. I'm not saying it's good, but you are. I guess McBride. I trust the role a little bit more. I mean, it depends. Brunson might be back next week for all we know. So that's worth noting. The Knicks do have a 4-game week, and it does include a back-to-back. So you would think Brunson, if he is back, would miss one of those. But Brunson's been doing on-court work. There's, I think, a pretty reasonable chance that he could be out there at some point next week. If that's the case, then obviously you default to Cole Anthony. But you were talking about Cole Anthony, and it sounds like, is there a chance that because he's missed this time, he's kind of once again lost out on that opportunity?
I think that is definitely in play. He had his minutes taken away from him early in the season because he wasn't playing well. Now the team's playing well with this new rotation of Corey Joseph starting and Anthony Black coming off the bench. There's no guarantee anymore. Cole Anthony's not a good enough player to guarantee that when he's healthy, his spot is back. Yeah. So I would say McBride is the better option there. Nick, always fun chopping it up, talking hoops with you, and for everybody that is listening live and for those listening on demand, thanks so much. We've got more episodes being cranked out throughout the course of the week right here on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Good luck tonight